I dare you to put the word Super Smash Brothers and Fire Emblem in the same sentence, because I assure you, you are bound to ignite some flames. The glaring problem that most of the Smash community sees with Fire Emblem and Smash is that the franchise has too many playable fighters in the roster, with a total of 8. Undoubtedly a huge number, series-wise, compared to other more significant Nintendo franchises, such as The Legend of Zelda, Kirby, and Mario. I can speak for the Fire Emblem community as well when I say that there are a lot of Fire Emblem fighters in Smash Ultimate that didn't need to be there in the first place. And that's exactly it. The premise of Smash Ultimate is the legendary "everyone is here" promise. Over Smash's 20-year history, harkening back to the days of the Nintendo 64, new fighters were introduced in every subsequent game, starting from Melee. The base roster of Smash 4 had 4 fighters in the base roster, being Marth, Ike, and newcomers Robin and Lucina. At that point, I can safely say that people weren't disappointed with Fire Emblem's playable representation just yet. The inclusion of Robin and Lucina was an important one, since Fire Emblem Awakening essentially revived the series and allowed it to become one of Nintendo's main franchises, next to the likes of Mario, Zelda, Metroid, and Animal Crossing, whether you like it or not. Awakening was intended to be the last game in the series, had it not been for a success which brought back the series from plunging into the forgotten abyss, so it was reasonable they were added in as fighters. Things seemed to be going well, until DLC happened.
I'm so sorry, everyone. I feel like I have no choice but to... join Smash!
Now before I reinvent the Fire Emblem roster in the game, I want to go over some rules for a future Smash game with an ideal representation of that franchise. Don't worry, this will be short. Well, number 1, no Echo Fighters. This is so that we can make Fire Emblem fighters feel different and unique to each other. Number 2, 1 character per game. Awakening currently has 3 playable fighters, and as good as that game is, I want to represent other games in the franchise to make the most out of its established presence in Smash. Number 3, at least 1 unique weapon type per character. All of the fighters depicted in Smash from Fire Emblem are equipped with swords one way or another. I'd like to branch out from that, and represent different weapon types from Fire Emblem beyond what is already seen in Smash with Robin, Corrin, and Byleth. Before, the new fighters don't have to necessarily be the main lord or character. Sakurai and the development team tend to prioritize the most recognizable face of the games, and the one you play the most, over characters that arguably have more personality and different weapons, but are not as important story-wise. With those 4 rules in mind, we have to cut Lucina and Chrom from the roster, which brings the total down to 6 again. Marth is a mainstay, Robin is a very important character in the history of the franchise, and Byleth hails from a game that is universally successful, critically and commercially, with 3 houses setting a precedent for new mechanics and storytelling. This leaves Ike, Corrin, and Roy up in the air. For the sake of moveset variety, Roy will also be excluded from the roster due to his similarities to Marth in playstyle. As mentioned previously, Corrin was added for marketing purposes and was really only brought back to Ultimate in line with the "everyone is here" concept. I highly doubt he would see a playable appearance in another Smash game, so therefore he will be cut. Ike does indeed have a unique playstyle, differing greatly from the other Fire Emblem characters by being a heavyweight sword user, though there are other heavyweight characters I want to mention later on in the video. Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn will still be represented, given they were the series' first foray into Nintendo consoles with the playable character, but just not with Ike. We now have Marth representing the classic NES era, Robin representing the 3DS era, and Byleth with the Switch era. 3 characters, all essential to the franchise for Smash and for Fire Emblem as a whole. Now this is where the fun begins. There have been 15 weapon types introduced in the series thus far, with Strike being exclusive to Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. Those are Sword, Lance, Axe, Bow, Anima Magic, Light Magic, Dark Magic, Black Magic, White Magic, Staff, Dagger, Brawl, Stone, and Breath. Marth currently has a playstyle that reflects on the weapon type of the other lords in the franchise, that being a sword. Robin shares that trait with Tomes, which encompasses anima magic mainly with Elfire, Elwind, and the 4 stages of Thunder, with a little bit of light magic sprinkled in with Nosferatu. Byleth has the Sword of the Creator as well as Aridbar, Amir, and Failnaught, all of which represent the classic weapon triangle in Fire Emblem. We've still got a lot of classes to cover, and although we can't include all of them whilst limiting the number of fighters, we can still improve the movesets of existing characters to accommodate them. In Robin's case, we can't use dark magic since he's not a dark mage nor a sorcerer, initially with his Smash Betrayal having him as a class of tactician. However, despite that, he can still use Nosferatu, which is not available to him by default, so if Sakurai can bend the rules, I can too. I'd like Robin to have his moveset prioritize the use of different tomes on the ground, with his aerials focusing on utilizing the Bronze and Levin Sword. As such, his tilts can be replaced by more anima magic attacks, as shorter range versions of Elwind, Elfire and Thunder. Durability for the tomes are increased with the increase of new magic attacks. For his smash attacks, as opposed to using the sword, we can use dark magic with attacks such as Miasma, Flux and Mir. Oh, and make him faster, please, by hovering over the ground akin to Dark Samus and Cloud. Byleth is an interesting case. He represents the weapon triangle well with his moveset, but isn't there a better way to do that? A way to please Fire Emblem fans and Smash fans alike? The next Smash game would have more focus on redeveloping the movesets with older characters and newcomers than Ultimate did. So, instead of Byleth, why not have Edelgard, Dimitri and Claude as part of a Pokemon Trainer style character, with each lord having their respective weapon types? This would mean coming up with 3 different movesets utilizing the axe, bow and spear, though it would be fantastic to see those weapons expanded upon with fan-favorite characters from 3 houses that were left in the dust by Byleth's inclusion over them. Edelgard would be the Charizard of the trio, with strong axe swings from Amir that are slow but incredibly rewarding when landed. Dimitri can reflect Ivysaur's playstyle, being a more balanced middleweight character that dominates neutral with range attacks and aerials from Aridbar for spacing. Being one normally proficient with the spear, he can also throw them in a trajectory similar to Toon Link's arrows, but would be the group Squirtle, a speedy lightweight prioritizing combos with Failnaught and having less than average kill potential, which is compensated for by Dimitri and especially Edelgard. This would represent 3 houses, both literally and greatly, in general, compared to Byleth. This makes it 5 characters, counting Edelgard, Claude, Dimitri as one separate character, though slot-wise on the roster it can still be considered 3. Other major Nintendo franchises would likely receive more characters in the future to coincide with new game releases and represent older games in playable form. As such, it isn't out of the question to say that we can expect one more fighter from Fire Emblem to represent a new game in the series, though we're currently talking about a what-if situation with Ultimate's roster, so we'll save that thought for another day. We've improved upon the established characters from Fire Emblem with new changes to their movesets. However, we still haven't explored potential newcomers that can represent more of the weapon classes in the franchise yet. So, let's dive in, shall we? Up first, we have a playable representative of the Super Famicom era, equipped with both swords and lances that give Smash its first taste of the Paladin class. Hailing from Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War, it's Sigurd! Sigurd is the main protagonist of the 4th game in the Fire Emblem franchise, Genealogy of the Holy War. He is the son of Lord Byron, who is a descendant of Baldur, a member of the 12 Crusaders. Sigurd is the prince of the Duchy of Chalpi, which is one of the 6 territories comprising the kingdom of Grannvale that he is a paladin of, and bears a strong sense of justice with the blade that he wields courageously into battle. The paladin class, which is essentially what Sigurd represents, are proficient in both swords and lances, though what sets them apart from other classes that specialize in those weapon types is the fact that they are mounted units. It paves the way for a unique playstyle that no other lord in the series can replicate. Sigurd is commonly depicted alongside his horse, so therefore his form of movement is on horseback. This makes for a heavyweight that is fast on the ground but has poor aerial mobility, and is easy to juggle due to his large hurt boxes. What compensates for those flaws is his damage output and range. His attacks are a combination of sword and lance strikes. Sigurd's jabs and aerials consist of swift but heavy blows functioning like ikes, damaging and has kill potential. You can damage opponents and knock them back by running into them with the horse, though turnarounds are very slow, which prevents dash dancing. The horse is also adept at attacking, with tilts that use its hooves and head to attack. Smash attacks revolve around the lance, with disjointed thrusts that lack in vertical range similar to Simon's, but make up for it in sheer power. His specials also mix in the sword and spear, accompanied by a counter modelled after his pursuit skill, which allows him to follow up with an attack. The gimmick with his mounted unit is that the horse is a separate entity, meaning that damage accumulated on the horse does not transfer over to Sigurd a la Rosalina and Luma. Racking up high percentages on the horse would result in it being knocked out, and hence Sigurd would have to fight without it for the rest of the stock or until being KO'd in a time battle. He has reduced mobility on the ground, but is a much more versatile fighter in the air, forcing players to adapt depending on the circumstances. Sigurd has the potential to represent one of the most underrated games in the franchise, and mounted units simultaneously. I would very much like to see him in a future Smash game, incorporating the horse somehow into his moveset. Next on the list is a character to expand the shallow pool of playable villains, representing the GBA era and the Dragonstone weapon type in greater fashion than Corrin. Binding Blade's new rep is... Aiden! Demon Dragon Aiden, also known as the Dark Priestess, is the final boss of Binding Blade, the 6th entry in the franchise. Multiple centuries prior to the events of the game, Aiden's tribe, consisting of the Divine Dragon, were a neutral party in the Scouring, which was a brutal war between humans and dragons. The Dragon Brethren became disadvantaged in the Scouring due to their inability to keep up with the increasing numbers of humans, and in a desperate attempt to turn back the tides, they appealed to Aiden's Divine Dragon tribe, hoping to turn them into demon dragons as reinforcements. The Divine Dragons disappeared with only Aiden remaining, fearing her tribe's potential involvement with the conflict, was captured and turned into a demon dragon herself. Her soul was removed and had no control over her form, mindlessly taking orders from the leader of the dragons to advance their attack on humanity. They eventually lost, and thus Aiden was sealed away for 1000 years by Roy's signature weapon, the Binding Blade. While Corrin may already showcase the potential of the Dragonstone, its betrayal in Smash is only partial, with a combination of sword strikes from the Omega Yato and some applications of his dragon form. Aiden, on the other hand, being a full-on Manakete, can transform fully into a dragon at will with the use of her stone, though having an ability like that would be broken if she was in that form for the entire match. Instead, I want to take the Fire Emblem Warriors Tiki approach with this moveset. Her gimmick consists of a meter that charges up whenever Aiden attacks. Initially in human form, Aiden is one of the weaker fighters with attacks that deal less than average damage and knockback, though she has a slew of defensive options that help to keep herself intact on stage. We can take some inspiration from her depiction in Fire Emblem Heroes. There, she's a unit with impeccable defense and plows through attacks like it's nothing. Most of her tilts have great range using her Dragonstone, and would be ideal for spacing given in her human form she could easily be KO'd. For her neutral special, Vengeful Fighter, Aiden could surround herself in a dark aura that absorbs an attack, or two if it is multi-hit, and unleash a purple explosion with a relatively large radius around her. Its functionality can combine that of Joker's down special, where he tanks damage taken from attacks and subsequently knocks them back, and Ryu's down special where he blocks a blow and follows up with a focus punch. She can hold it for 2.5 seconds before the dark aura fades away. Though the explosion itself isn't powerful enough to have kill potential, it could make up for its lack of knockback by effectively being used as a tool to keep her enemies at bay. The damage absorbed fills up her meter, with stronger attacks filling up the bar faster. Her other specials, excluding a R.O.B, revolve around maintaining a defensive stance so as to keep her alive before her meter is full, which gives her the opportunity to land the finishing blow. Once she reaches full meter, she transforms into the Demon Dragon, equipped with an entirely different moveset that greatly enhances her damage output, knockback and speed at the expense of having a larger hitbox, which makes Aiden much easier to engage combos with. Her Demon Dragon form lasts up to 30 seconds, though any attacks can reduce the amount of time spent during that transformation. This comic mechanic rewards aggression, converting Aiden's defensive playstyle into a rushdown playstyle, designed for knocking out the opponent before she reverts back to her more vulnerable form. a mix of offensive and defensive options that constitutes a high-risk, high-reward playstyle which, if used correctly, can make Aiden a contender for a top-tier character in the right hands. There's one more character that I want to introduce before I give my final thoughts on the matter. Rule number 4 applies especially in this case. The character does not have to be the main lord of the game. To represent it, Fire Emblem is already a well-established series in Smash. If, say, Ruto was the first fighter from Zelda in Smash, it would evidently be a more controversial decision, regardless of moveset, than having Jada, for example, in over Marth as Fire Emblem's first playable rep. Hailing from the Path of Radiance games on the Wii, it's Soth! Soth is a thief comprising the Dawn Brigade, which is a rebel group from Dane, a notable area in the continent of Tellius. He has since formed a strong sibling-like bond with Micaiah at a young age, who is one of the main protagonists of Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn next to Ike. Soth also has a great deal of respect for Ike, serving under him during the Mad King's War, which caused friction between him and his childhood friend. The thief showcases barely any interest in other people, acts overprotective of Micaiah, with a tendency to not smile as much. However, he is an invaluable asset to Ike's army, and seeks to support his reign as king with his knife and combat experience. The Thief class, accompanied by the knife as their default weapon, is one that is lacking in playable representation in Smash. His relatively low base stats in the Tellius games is compensated for by his impressive speed, which can be transferred over to Smash. Similar to Joker, Sheik and Greninja, Soth can be a hit-and-run fighter, with a playstyle that prioritizes swift combos with enough kill potential to not be as bad as Sheik. The perks of playing Soth could be that he has excellent overall mobility, having quick frame data in his attacks which are difficult to punish due to the general Smash cast having moves that are slower than his. Knives and Fire Emblem can be used as an option for both ranged and melee attacks, meaning he can have considerable range as a fighter, being able to throw his weapon as well as strike rapidly with it. That said, his damage output is below average and is harder to rack up the percentage if combos are not stringed properly. Soth makes for a balanced character, with good camping tools and reliable kill moves, as well as the ability to engage in extended combos. He has a skill in the Tellius games called Blossom, which increases his stats when he levels up, but it is harder to gain XP as a trade-off. This skill can also be filtered into Smash Ultimate as a rage mechanic a la Lucario. Each 20% damage he accumulates, he levels up and maxes out at 100%. His level is indicated by an icon next to his mugshot. Blossom is activated when he levels up, increasing his stats through enhancing his damage output, speed and knockback. This progression over the course of the match makes him a dangerous opponent beyond 100% when he reaches level 5, as he has granted more kill potential to complement his already impressive mobility. His knives can be thrown at the opponent for his neutral special, a relatively fast projectile with similar damage and knockback to Balev's uncharged Fail Not arrow. Thieves have the ability to steal and open doors and chests with the Lock Touch skill. The latter trait is essentially useless in combat, though stealing can be applied here in Ultimate with his side B. If Soth is within close range of the opponent, he dashes through them and steals a random special move that isn't his up B. Soth cannot use it for himself, though the opponent is prevented from using it until Soth is hit enough times for him to drop the stolen special move, which is automatically returned back to the victim. He can only store one special move at a time. All in all, Soth could be a speedy fighter with a great mix of close range and long range attacks to gradually rack up the percentage. His rage mechanic, in the form of leveling up, and his Blossom skill, can allow him to make a comeback when he is in the higher percentages. It establishes him as a kill or be killed character, highlighting the basic premise of war in Fire Emblem games. A franchise with as rich of a history as Fire Emblem deserves the representation it gets in Smash. Sure, it's lacking in stages and some really good music tracks from recent games that they're missing out on, but I've tried my best to represent Fire Emblem as a whole with just the fighters alone. Most of the Smash community prioritizes fighters above all else when a series is introduced to the games, and that's fine. After all, Smash Ultimate focuses heavily on the roster this time around, but setting those who appreciate new inclusions from a franchise they like on fire does not set a good example of a community that should be passionate about this massive gaming celebration. People are entitled to their opinions, and we do not think alike. Where somebody may feel lukewarm about a certain character reveal, others are absolutely ecstatic over it. But that doesn't mean you have to impose it on others, and especially Sakurai. DLC does indeed open up new opportunities for fan favourite characters to join, but when one from specifically Fire Emblem or a relatively unknown character such as Terry makes it in, a lot of heads are shaken. It's more important that a character is fun to play than being recognisable, paraphrasing Sakurai's words. At the end of the day, Ultimate has outdone itself in pleasing fans with long requested characters like King K. Rool, Ridley, Banjo, Chrom, Simon and Isabelle, as well as bringing back some old favourites that missed the spotlight in previous Smash games. The character choices alone are more than enough to make this game memorable, but there are parts of the game not as appreciated which are evidently a labour of love. There are so many unique stages to choose from, I have difficulty knowing where to pick my next one in almost 2 years in. Not to mention the vast library of music and the other modes which make Smash Ultimate ooze with content. One character being added over another should not warrant such negativity. Despite its name, Smash Bros is meant to bring people together, not tear them apart. Thanks for checking out this video. If you made it all the way to the end, I congratulate you, and I hope it gave you some perspective into Fire Emblem and its presence in Smash. Feel free to provide some constructive criticism below. I'm always happy to take advice in order to improve. It doesn't hurt to subscribe if you're already interested in the essay-based content that I provide. Have a good one.